Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Sadanand Sahu from Indira Gandhi National Open University. Today I am going to talk model issues of integration in host lands, South Asia from paper Sociology of Indian Diaspora. The main objectives of this paper, this unit deals with the issues of integration faced by Indian diaspora in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Maldives. Basically, the intention is to focus on their ability to integrate and their concrete effort to do so and the subsequent reactions of the host society. This unit deals with the issues of integration faced by Indian diaspora in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Maldives. Basically, the intention is to focus on their ability to integrate and their concrete effort to do so and the subsequent reactions of the host society. Although they play different roles in the economy and polity of each country, the Indian diasporic communities in these South Asian countries still exhibit some common characteristics that makes them different from the rest of the Indian diaspora spread across the globe. One of the important unique characteristics of this diaspora, excluding the case of those in Pakistan, is their back and forth movement between Indian border and their host country, which makes it difficult for them to settle and integrate in the host society and to be accepted by them. The issues of integration of the Indian diaspora in these South Asian countries are dealt with separately, country by country, in the upcoming sessions. India shares borders with Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives and Sri Lanka. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan and Maldives share borders with India. This geographically continuity enables migrant move back and forth, which makes Indian diaspora in these countries a unique case. Since borders are shared, the term borderland as coined by Roger Rauch could be used for these countries. Rauch uses this term for Mexican migrants Aguililla who live in Redwood City, California, but continuously shuttle across the border, which is imagined as a transnational space where two distinct cultures encounter each other, thus forming borderland. While residing in Redwood City, they formed such deep connections with the Aguililla that the two cities are no longer thought of as distinct spaces. However, they have not assimilated completely in the culture of USA. In fact, they have learned to work in a dichotomized setting by maintaining a cultural bifocality. Therefore, they do not have features of classic diasporas. Similarly, the concept borderlands could be used for countries in Indian subcontinent. Since borders are shared, except in the case of Pakistan, there is much to and fro movement. These borderland communities do not have the features of classical diasporas. In fact, there is a contestation where Indian origin population in these countries can at all be called diaspora or not. However, this overseas population is still addressed as diaspora for the reason that A. These people have left their home country and are residing in a foreign land, and B. These people consider themselves to be ethnic group who have a sense of belongingness as they share common history, culture and identity. These two are important factor according to Robin Cohen that defines diaspora. Pakistan, non-Muslim majority in population, Muslim migrants from India. Partition of the Indian subcontinent led to massive migrations. Millions of people were exchanged in both sides of the border. In the case of Pakistan, there is no question of people of Indian origin, as all were Indians before 1947. Hence, the section deals with the issues of integration of non-Muslim majority population in Pakistan, Muslim population who migrated from India to Pakistan but are still considered to be aliens. Non-Muslim minority population. Religious minorities in Pakistan account for approximately 4 to 5% of the total population, including Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Ahmadiyya, Baha'i, Buddhists, Jains, and Zoroastrians. They were given official assurance of security, protection, and an egalitarian society, which didn't last for long. Grave human rights abuses and violations, exploitations, discrimination by the government as well as by the majority population are some of the serious concerns. In 1947, Jinnah has declared Pakistan a democratic and secular state, but in 1970s, with the military coup of General Ziaul Haq, nature of Pakistani state changed from secular to Islamic. With the addition of Shariat, Islamic law, in constitution, enactment of various bills and ordinances like Hudud Ordinance in 1979, Qanun-e-Shahadat or the law of evidence, and various other laws and amendments in the constitution made religious minorities feel further discriminated and unequal in the eyes of law. Apart from official laws enacted by the state government, religious minorities are said to have been exploited and discriminated at the hands of majority population as well. Abduction for money, rape, destruction of temples and churches top the list. Government was ineffective in giving them protection, despite the fact that they are living in their forefathers' land. Religious minorities are considered inferior and second-class citizens. There have been many peaceful and silent protests and campaigns against the exploitation. For instance, in 2011, Hindus and Christians organized a hunger strike after the murder of 4 Hindu doctors in Hyderabad. Despite many protests and campaigns, it seems that the government had not taken any substantial steps to provide protection minority groups. The minority groups have formed many non-government organizations but are not active in politics and bureaucracy. Muslim migrants from India, Muhajirs. According to Richards, Muhajirs are defined by the census of Pakistan 1951 as persons who have moved into Pakistan as a result of partition or for fear of disturbances connected therewith. In practice, Muhajirs refer to only those Muslims who are Urdu speaking and who migrated to Sindh from various provinces in India. At the time of partition, Muhajirs dominated Pakistan economically, politically, culturally. Along with their higher education and professional background, their domination in government significantly helped the whole community. They were immediately accepted perhaps because of shared culture, tradition, history, common language, for example Urdu and food, etc. Two changes in the form of death of Jinnah and Liaquat Ali Khan and the military coup of Ayub Khan faded this dominance. The political system soon became chaotic and unmanageable. The reign of Ayub Khan brought hardship for Muhajirs. Pathans, Punjabis were made to resettle in Karachi. This affected the Muhajirs' employment opportunity. Shifting of the capital from Karachi to Islamabad also affected the Muhajirs' economic and social status. Over a period of 15 years, Mahajirs lost control of important spheres, for example, bureaucratic, political, and economic, they once had a strong hold of. Gradually, distinct Mahajir groups evolved into united single ethnic group owing to shared experiences of discrimination and oppression by the state. With realization of a single ethnic identity, many Mahajir movements cropped up. As a result, Mahajir Kwame movement (MQM) was formed in 1984 to get back the original economic, bureaucratic and political status. Predominantly formed to address issues of Mahajirs, MQM also started dealing with women's issues. In 1997, Mahajir Kwame movement changed its name to Mutahida Kwame movement. Although they had a big hand in the development of idea of separate state of Pakistan, Mahajirs have not been able to integrate in the society and are still considered to be distinct and foreign group, toiling hard to come to forefront in political and economic spheres to regain original status. Only time will tell whether they are able to attain this position or not. Bangladesh. Again, the case of Bangladesh is the same as Pakistan, where all are people of Indian origin. So, the issues of amalgamation of minority population in Bangladesh society will be discussed. This section deals with the plight and struggle of the indigenous people only. Here it is Chakma tribe living in the Chittagong hill tract. The reason is that this group is most affected by the atrocities and exploitation as government snatched its lands and resources. In CHT, that is called Chittagong Hill Tracts, 13 tribes reside, but Chakma is the largest. They are predominantly Buddhist, having neither linguistic nor cultural affinity with Bengalis. Being a distinct and secluded group, they were given a special status by British rulers, which limited movement of outsiders to this tract. This maintained their socio-cultural integrity. But the successive governments of Pakistan and the Bangladesh pursued strategies of rehabilitating the Bengali population to these areas. Tribal people not only lost their possessions, but their very survival was threatened. Consequently, thousands of people were displaced. Most of them took refuge in India owing to security and economic concerns. Those who stayed in Bangladesh formed a self-defense organization called Parbatya Chattagram Jan Samiti (PCJSS) or Chittagong Hill Tribal Peoples Coordination Association in 1972. Few years later, the PCJSS military arm, the Shanti Bahini, initiated a violent campaign to attain independence. After many years of struggle and negotiation, peace finally came in the year of 1997 with the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord. The accord promised to restore a number of reforms relating to upliftment of tribal people. 15 years to the peace accord, but troops are still present in the area and have not been withdrawn, which is still the cause of persistent violence in the region. Therefore, there is a need to implement clauses of the accord that have not yet been implemented even after so many years of negotiations, and problems has not been solved. The problem has now become twofold, with the conflict between tribals and government as well as the intra-group conflict. Given the situation, the region continues to be vulnerable. Sri Lanka. Indian Tamils migrated to Sri Lanka in the 19th century mainly as indentured labor who worked in the tea plantation, construction of infrastructure like roadways and rails, expansion, expansion of Colombo harbors, etc. They were settled in the states of the hilly regions of the central Sri Lanka. Conditions started worsening in 1940s when Ceylon Citizenship Bill was enacted. According to this bill, those inhabitants who do not have Ceylonese citizenship would not be able to stay in Sri Lanka anymore. This act affected socio-economic life of Indian Tamils, and several of them decided to move back to India. According to Brij Lal and et al., by the year 1950s, around 34,000 Indian Tamil returned from Sri Lanka. A few years later, in 1953, this number increased and Jawaharlal Nehru allowed 3 lakh people to return to India, while 4 lakh 50,000 were considered Sri Lankan citizenship. Along with the issues of citizenship, political, economic rights, there was another critical issue which was impacting a smooth integration of Indian Tamils in Sri Lankan society, the conflict between Lankan Tamils and Sinhalas. In the 1950s and 60s, Sinhala became the official language and Buddhism was adopted as the state religion, which had serious implications for the Tamils in Sri Lanka. These acts served as a precursor to the deadly ethnic conflict as Tamils felt threatened as a culturally distinct group, and to safeguard their identity and bread and butter, they realized many organizations were formed to resist Sinhala oppression. Although they didn't take part in the conflict, Indian Tamils were always targeted by Sinhala army just because they were Tamils. Their lands and resources were snatched. The coming years witnessed massive exodus of Indian Tamils. This can be attributed to brutal atrocities, grave human rights violations, murders, etc., conducted by Sinhala military as well as Lankan Tamil militants. Although with the destruction of LTTE, the ethnic conflict has ended, Indian Tamils are still not at peace. Tamils are still shuttling between India and Sri Lanka, and this to and fro movement seems to be unending. Many refugees prefer to return as they consider Sri Lanka to be their homeland. Many prefer to stay in India as it is their forefathers' land and they feel safe here, while many others consider both states to be their home and keep on switching between the two countries for better economic and social conditions. Maldives. Immigration to Maldives started in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Indian diaspora encompasses professionals like teachers, doctors, engineers, etc., as well as unskilled and semi-skilled laborers. Professionals lead a very comfortable life, but at the other end of the spectrum, there are laborers who are in miserable conditions. Human rights abuses and ill treatment by employees are the main concerns of laborers. Apart from this, there are strict regulations on immigrations which prevent migrants from settling there permanently. This standard condition of laborers has compelled Indian authorities to take some steps to prevent their abuse. Indian High Commission safeguarded the rights of Indian workers by redefining the legal and official requirements such as detailed employment contracts and payment for unfair dismissals. Despite issues, the cultural bonding of Indian diaspora with the natives is increasing. In 2011, the Indian Cultural Center was set up in Malé, which further improved Indian diaspora and Maldivians' relationship. The objective of establishing this center was to enhance their relations and increase understanding between the two countries. They also celebrate India Maldives Friendship Festival INMA annually, which includes a friendship walk. This year, the walk was organized on August 8, 2014. Many Indians as well as Maldivians participated in 2-kilometer walk in Malé. The walk confirmed the enduring friendship between Indians and Maldives. Furthermore, Maldivians are also fond of Indian movies, food, cloth, and many things that enables Indians to thrive in trade. Nepal. For centuries, Indians have been moving to the southernmost region of Nepal called Tarai and are called Madhesis or people of plains by the hill people. Madhesis face a number of key issues related to citizenship, language, underrepresentation in politics, economic discrimination, etc. Although they are of Indian origin, they are not referred to as Indian diaspora. Those who migrated after 1920 are called Indian diaspora. Migration to Nepal happened mainly in 20th century, followed by the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the two countries in 1950. This treaty augmented Indo-Nepal cordial relations and enabled freedom of movement and settlement across the border. Indians and Nepalese moved crossways in search of better employment opportunities. Impact of migrations was soon felt by Nepalese. Indian diaspora groups were considered to be alien and competitor who are not only exploiting their natural resources but also creating economic and security troubles. Indian Marwaris have a strong economical hold in Nepal with which Nepalese couldn't compete. All important businesses were set up by Indians only, which developed an anti-India feeling. As a result, many strict regulations were imposed so as to limit immigrants to Nepal. According to Reeves, in 1962, the Panchayat government declared that the applicants should be well versed in Nepali, have an occupation, and reside in Nepal for 2 years. In 1975, the residential requirement was increased to 15 years to limit migration further. Demands were coming of imposing more strict regulations and checks at the border, which was porous once. Relations between India and Nepal also worsened during these years, but got better with the setup of democratic government, which also reassured the wave of new migrations. But the problem of Indians to integrate in the host society persists as they still dominate the economy and of the country, which makes native insecure and hostile. Today also there is more hostility after the earthquake in Nepal. So students, let's now summarize what we have learned in this model. The geographical position of this subcontinent is such that each country share border with India and together could be addressed as borderlands. As we have seen, Indian diaspora in these countries doesn't conform to classical diaspora case primarily because of its back and forth mobility, which makes it a different case altogether. Nevertheless, these people are also still called diaspora because they fulfill the basic criteria of being diaspora group, having dispersed from from their homeland and sharing a common identity of being Indian. Despite sharing similar culture and traditions because of South Asian affinity, Indian diasporas are still foreigner. They face problems in integrating despite having played an important role in economic development of the regions. Thank you.